can be angry at an addict all you want, but if you choose to do it that way, you're never going to be able to open their eyes.
Lava for Good and Stand Together Music present the War on Drugs podcast, Season 2. This season, we're diving deeper into the real stories behind the war on drugs, its impact, its failures, and the people offering a better path forward. Today on the show, lead singer and songwriter of multi-platinum rock band Shinedown, authors of 19 #1 hits on the Billboard mainstream rock charts, the most ever, including Atlas Falls, Save Me, and Second Chance, outspoken mental health advocate Brent Smith, and his longtime manager, friend, and confidant, acclaimed record promoter and manager Bill McGathy. All right.
Yeah.
Another episode, War on Drugs Season 2.
Yes.
Real people, real
stories,
solutions.
real solutions.
And the real Clayton English.
The real Greg Glide.
There we go.
Yeah. Not the AI version.
No.
Which probably will be next season.
At this point,
out of work,
I mean,
bro.
you get like 150 words.
This is what they've been doing. This is why they are face mapping us right now.
Probably. Yeah.
But
anyway, amazing interview. I did this one solo. I saw Brent Smith and his manager, Bill McGathy. Brent is from Shinedown, one of the most successful bands of all time, and they were getting ready to gear up for a show that they're going to do later on at MSG. So we were able to catch him up there, and it was a great conversation. He's literally one of the biggest stars in the world, and he is the most humble, honest, like just content, just an amazing person. There is this story that comes up in it. It really feels like this kind of Hollywood story of Brent staring down, success and fame potentially, or is he going to allow this addiction to maybe, divert his career? And again, it's addiction coming in all shapes and forms, and what recovery is for some and what it isn't for others. I don't want to give much away, but it really is one of these like really cool stories that I had no idea about. And so can't wait for y'all to listen to it. And without any further ado, Brent Smith.
Okay, welcome back to the War on Drugs. We have some very special guests here. Brent Smith, creator Shinedown, being a 37-year-old kid from the suburbs. Shinedown was a big part of my childhood growing up and throughout the years. So welcome to the show. And radio promotion legend Bill McGathy's here as well. And so thank you all for coming on the War on Drugs podcast. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
You're very welcome.
First album comes out in 2001. Is that right? Is it a debut album?
It circulated, I think that it was, roughly 2001, 2002.
Okay,
I'd have to go back and check
whenever
it.
I
mean, the first album, I think it was last year? Yeah, last year. So, no, it would have been 2003 because it had its 20-year anniversary last year. So
there was a deluxe album, I remember, popped
so
up on my
03.
Spotify. Okay, that's right, okay. Oh, yeah, so that'd be 20 years from there. And so I'm curious, so when you were you all toured immensely. I was kind of looking through your stuff. It was over 200 gigs a year. I might probably underselling it at this point.
No, I mean, we had to do that, I mean, it was all built off. I mean, honestly, man, it was built off of the radio and just relentless touring. To the point, but you're young, you're in your 20s and, we weren't shy, with the work ethic.
Right.
We were definitely on drugs.
Yeah, that's
and a lot of them.
Yeah.
But you could have never said that we were lazy.
200 some odd shows and travel, and obviously you're getting off. It's not like you're in private jets or anything. I'm assuming tour bus and all that. And so was drugs and alcohol a big part of kind of that early start before y'all started to make it?
Yeah.
And then how did it kind of change when resources start to come? You're going through this, there's success, there's every vice that you'd ever want.
Yeah.
If it's women, booze, or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that was just kind of the ramp up, the availability and everything? Or was it more, now looking back, is it the stress of the situation? Yeah, kind of 30,000 foot perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think that changed crossover when you guys started to make it or at least get some recognition, notoriety?
I think what happened was that there for a minute in the beginning, it was fun. And then it got
not fun.
Then it got not fun. It got deadly.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I will be honest with you, like we were on a trajectory. Someone once told me, they said, you have your whole life to make your first record. And then if that first album is successful, you're going to get 6 months to do your next one. And it was the speed of which, like, honestly, the drugs and the gasoline of the, and the diesel, of the alcohol, it fueled like you can't slow down. Mm-hmm. You can't stop. Like we got to get in, because the first record was successful by a lot of people's surprise, if you will, but it was just out of pure tenacity that we made it successful. And then the second record, it was exactly that. It was about 6 months, like get in there, get it done, get back out on the road. So the drugs were the fuel inside of that too. Not all the time, but like all of a sudden it became not fun. Yeah. And the other thing that was happening was all these bands, me and Bill were talking about this the other day. There were so many great bands, dude, that came out during like 2003 to 2006. They're not a band anymore because a lot of them died.
Yeah.
They died of overdoses, man.
And that was, right during the opioid epidemic as it's ramping up, like OxyContin were starting to come into play. And so I'm sure that was a huge part of it.
I could name the artists that we were working with, touring with, that they went in to get them for sound check and they were dead in their bunk.
Dude, it was brutal. It was, and so then you're dealing with this whole thing of like, your friends, you're watching them and they were like dropping like flies. Mm-hmm. But then I look at myself in the mirror and, I'm still snorting cocaine. Yeah. Or I'm still, and I was massively. Yeah,
what drugs are we talking about?
I was massively addicted to OxyContin. Yeah. I was doing 400 milligrams up my nose a night by 2005, 2006. It was not pretty. Yeah. Inside of this, it became something where you could take like a 2-week break sometimes and you could kind of get yourself together and you'd sober up for a minute and then you get back out into the lifestyle and it's right there.
It's right there. Yeah.
Like it doesn't go anywhere. And then all of a sudden you're starting to get recognition because somehow I always made a point though about something specifically. I never went into a studio session high. Like I never got up on a microphone when I'm in there to like sing the actual track, and when I'm writing the material, I was never high in sessions. But I used to have this idea that I used to think I have to be messed up in order to write messed up songs.
Right. Yeah.
Or like this really heavy subject matter and what have you.
I got to put myself in that element.
I got to put myself into it because I got to live it in order to be able to talk about it.
Was that kind of an excuse to feel justified in doing it, or more so you felt like it was helping?
It definitely wasn't helping.
Yeah. That's a combination. Yeah. That's called rationalization.
Yeah, yeah.
But we are closer, I would think, than most artists and managers. Because he's more than an artist on my roster. He's helped me. He's my partner. He's my best friend. I love him. He's my brother. He's, and I don't even care how he looks at me. Sometimes I feel like he looks at me like I'm an older brother. Sometimes I think he looks at me as maybe kind of a dad, maybe.
I always look up to him, though.
Yeah. Either way. Yeah.
Either way, I always
doesn't matter. Yeah. Yeah.
But I had no idea he was doing that much OxyContin. I would have kicked his butt.
Did you see anything?
Well, he came to Los Angeles during the Sound of Madness album and saved my life.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk about so there's a moment here. Yeah, let's talk about that. So you're flying in there. What did you see when you came to Los Angeles?
What it started with was I got a call from an incredible friend of ours. I can't even tell you what a great experience. And he called me, and it wasn't like, hey, listen, man, we got a little trouble here in the camp. I need you to get down here. He literally shrieked at me, get your ass to Los Angeles. He said, your guitar player OD'd and fell off his stool. He said, I don't know what's going on with Brent, but they are messed up. Right. And so then I immediately went to my wife and said, well, this, I got to go. So I booked a ticket that afternoon, flew to Los Angeles, and I got there just in time too, because you'd had that situation with the rental car, and you sideswiped like
three parked cars.
Oh wow! He was
going
so
to
good.
Chris Lord Alge's studio to listen to a mix, and I hit 3 parked cars because I was high. I ran a red light.
He was so high, but yet he's so good. A functioning addict, right? He was so good with his words, and always has been, that he had talked the police out of
going to jail.
Yeah.
Doing what police do, arresting me. Yeah. Getting away with hitting 3 park cars. Yeah, that's some
and
Jedi
by the way,
mind.
like it sounds very rock and roll, and it sounds like, kind of, cinematic in a way. Dude, I could have killed somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know what I mean? When I think about it now, I'm in awe that a lot of times too that I've been so lucky to still be here. But the fact of the matter was that was a real thing that happened. The other side of that though is that's when Bill got out there, and what it was it was more of, I looked at Bill as, I felt like everybody was a narc.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill didn't come out there with an attitude where he was pointing a finger at me. He was more like, hey, I got an idea. Let's take tomorrow off. But let's take it off, meaning like, let's not drink. Let's not do anything like that. Let me take you out to lunch. Let's go out to Santa Monica. We'll go shopping, or we'll just get out. You know what I mean? And he was able to treat me in a way where he wasn't coming out there to be angry at me per se. He was trying to also figure out what was actually happening, because he knew there was a lot riding on this. And I think Bill understood that this was the best music that he had heard from any of the artists on his roster.
No doubt. And that it was hits.
Mm-hmm.
But second chance.
There were 7 singles off of Sound of Madness, but he was also like, none of this matters if he's dead.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we got to figure out how to do this in a way where we can actually bring him to the forefront, meaning me, and get me help and, understand what's actually going on here. Because you can be angry at an addict all you want. But if you choose to do it that way, you're never going to be able to open their eyes. And so he really treated me as best he could, understanding also too. I remember one night you said to me, you were like, this has got to be hard. Like, you got all these people that need you to be great. They need you. Everyone's waiting on you to be brilliant.
It's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. And nobody had said it to me like that, because I hadn't complained about that, but that was how I felt.
Right.
I was just like, I am not used to being in this situation. I don't know how to handle this.
And you're frying your nerve endings.
I was just scared.
Right. Yeah. And
because I didn't want to let anybody down. And at the same time, I was numbing not only my body, but like my mind's eye, if you will. And then waking up with a hangover, feeling like I was 10 steps back. And what he was trying to do was say, you gotta breathe and make a decision. I'm not saying that you gotta be 100% sober, but if you continue being as, messed up as you are, you're not gonna make it, kid.
Yeah. And was that
so you gotta make a decision.
Was there some apprehension or reticence to be like, hey, fuck off. Like, I understand what you're saying, but like, we're making tracks here. Like, what was that interaction like? What was your response to him? And
we almost got
about it.
We almost got shelved.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, and by our A&R guy, and he wanted to do the right thing. So when we came with the Sound of Madness, it was all hits, brilliant album, and we played it. And I watched the reaction in the room, as we always do, and I could tell that they got it big time, right? But as we were walking out of, I don't know whether I should tell this, but I guess I'm gonna.
I mean, it really happened.
So I knew all the timing was right. The touring, everything was going to come together, and we were going to blow the band up. And he says,
it was a defining moment.
He says, we're on the 72nd floor of the Rock building.
Yeah.
And we're standing outside by the window, and he said, well, that's all well and good. We're greenlit. He said, I'm going to shelve the album, and we're going to put Brent into rehab. And I looked at him, and I said, what did you just say?
Yeah.
I said,
because you have a 200 city tour, and you have all.
Oh, man,
you're already in the bus.
We're planning everything, right? I said, hey, man, you trying to prove your life insurance is paid up? Because I'll throw you through that fucking window.
Here's the thing. It's one of the most, like, for me personally, I'm sitting there, look, man, he cleaned me up. This is like when he came out, he literally saved my life. He really, really did. He got me focused to get into New York from LA, put me in a really, really nice suit, cleaned me up, walked me in there. He knew what he was up against also. Because the thing is like, people may hear this and be like, well, that's a manager for you. You got to understand, it's not a one-way street. Mm-hmm. I have to be in this as well, just like he has to be in it. And there's other people involved. You know what I mean? Like, the music business is not for everyone. And I often will tell people it's called the music business industry for a reason. The word business is in the title. Right. Music's in it too, but it's a business, okay? And there's people's, jobs, careers, everything's on the line, especially when you make an album and you have to have the foresight to kind of have an instinct and a crystal ball, like what the next 2 years could be or could not be. And again, who is a legend in the industry and who is one of the reasons why I'm in the music industry 20 years in the game, But he was in a position where he was looking at his friend and he was just like, I gotta get you. I don't want you to die.
He's probably seen it before.
You know what I mean? Yeah, he's like,
does he have like flashbacks of other,
He's like, I don't want you to die. Mm-hmm. Me and Bill are talking to one another about these things and what have you. And what Bill is trying to do is also, as my manager and, me as the artist, he's trying to decide whether or not he believes me when I tell him I'm not going to let him down.
Right.
Like, because he's like, as your manager, my artist is telling me that they got it. I'm going to side with my artist.
Always.
Yeah. And you're on the line too. You're out here. You're vouching for this.
Hey, man, I was worried about him too, but shelving his album wasn't going to save his life.
May have gone the other way with it.
Yeah, exactly.
For you, hearing Bill kind of blow up, I don't know, I'd be like, wow, this guy really does. Did that help kind of, it's almost like a Hollywood script, like the fact that you're in this record room, the huge table, probably like, you need to get your shit together. Like, do you think that would have been enough, or was it Bill fighting for you? Like, what do you think was going on? Like, what was your next hour after that? Talk about that process. I'm just curious, like, in a room of executives, having your manager where you're at this critical moment in your life, scream at someone and threaten to throw out the window. Is that something that was like, this guy really believes in me, this is something, or was that already taken care of? I'm just fascinated with that.
I think another part of my brain was born. If that makes any sense. It
does, yeah.
Like, there was another section that had not been realized, and with that moment, like, there was another part of my psyche that was born, where it all of a sudden it really became, yes, I'm an artist, but I have certain people around me that need me to be at all times at my highest level. Mm-hmm. And so, if anything, I think that he helped me find another gear in my work ethic from that moment.
But it was by osmosis. It was organic. It wasn't like me saying, well, no, it wasn't very organic, threatening to throw the A&R guy out the window. And by the way, he didn't forgive me right away.
It took a minute.
That's fair.
It took a couple years, but it's okay because we got it straight now. Yeah. And I love the guy, and he loves Brent, and, But I just knew that wasn't the answer.
Right. Again, you're making some of the best music you ever made in your life, like at kind of the worst, at the lowest lows. It's a weird dynamic.
No, what I will tell you is, like, and I know this from firsthand experience, this younger generation, they look at it and they're like, yeah, but you had your fun and you're telling me not to have mine. Right. And I'm like, because I don't want you to die.
Yeah. Yeah, like your story is kind of like, hey, you had this thing, and do you want to be rich and famous or not? And you're like, oh, I picked this and got it.
It's not even about being rich and famous. It's about being alive. Exactly. You want to be alive.
Yeah, but it's for a lot of people probably listening to your point. It's like it almost sounded easy, like, oh yeah, you got to have your wounds and your scars, and ha ha ha. Now we get to laugh about it. And now you're doing amazing, but that's not the. That's not the story for
because I
most
also,
people. Yeah.
you know, there's also people in my life that meant the world to me, and sorry, hang on.
No, that's fine.
They're gone.
Yeah,
and that's the brutal part of it.
Yeah,
is I can't talk to them anymore, and I don't mean to like just rake the record here, across the table, but that's the issue. Is that I don't want people to ever feel that, drug addiction should be glorified, because it's a nightmare. And not only that, it's a nightmare for all the people that are around it. Mm-hmm. And I know that it gets stigmatized, and I know that, we should be looking at a better way to treat addicts. Throwing them in a cage doesn't necessarily create sobriety. It creates, anger, frustration, and get me out of here so I can get high. You know what I mean? If you don't give people an understanding that, hey, you're going to have to build out a different skill set to handle this. Some people don't have to go to rehab. Some people need a 12-step, and because they need that accountability, there's not a one-size-fits-all for addiction.
Right.
There's no way of handling it.
Because the underlying issues are completely different for everyone. It could be from, sexual abuse. It could be from hereditary. It could be, it's all these different things. But the one thing it isn't is a bad person. And I think that's what we kind of do sometimes. Like, so for example, say you didn't talk that cop out of it, and then you got a DWI or DUI, and then you had a criminal record, you spent some time, and then you lost this record deal, and then it went down the hill. I mean, that could have been 100%. The story. And that's the story for a lot of people, because the criminal justice system doesn't have...
There were too many hits for us to lose the record deal, but the timing would have been wrong.
Yeah. Would have been... yeah, I guess you got a second chance on there. Yeah, you'll figure it out.
They have a tendency to kind of turn their head a little bit, It's a hit.
But you all, not, I guess fortune's the word, had people around you to say you're valued and you're worth it. I don't think a lot of people have that. And Knoxville's a little different than some of the southern towns because it's a college town and it's a little different. But I'm sure you said you had people love you. I'm sure there were a lot of parallel tracks for folks back there, particularly in rural areas that were, the opioid epidemic hit so hard, that didn't have that person in their lives, or got in the criminal justice system too quickly, or didn't get to talk to someone about the foundations of their addiction, and it was too late.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you've had stories like that. I'm assuming you have. Are you still dealing with that back home, or like, what does that look like for you now, kind of post? We're not even out of the opioid addiction, but post that, like coming down sober, like what does that look like for you back in your hometown and your friends and family?
I mean, the good thing about Knoxville is that Knoxville takes a lot of just that city in general, really, really focuses on getting people help and not necessarily, throwing them in jail and what have you. There's a lot of outreach there. The big thing about that city, because of like, you look at the kind of the geography of like Tennessee and the southern states, Appalachia, West Virginia, we all know what happened there with, the Sacklers and all that, I was in the midst of that. So like when Michael Keaton did that series on Hulu, and I think
Dope Sick.
Probably one of the best. If you wanted to see how it played out, I would tell you to go watch that. And it is worth watching it because they pretty much, I lived that. Like literally lived that.
Yeah, I love the focus they have on the sales aspect of it, the aggressiveness and what they were telling people. And go ahead.
Yeah,
I
and
agree.
another thing too, my friend Jelly Roll, man, when he went to Washington, shout out to Jelly, man, because Jelly went out there, Senate, Congress, everything else, and made a point, with his celebrity and that he's really he brings at the forefront. I mean, you talk about people that are necessary in the industry, man. Jelly is definitely necessary because he's really he has a lot of experience with that as well. But, you've got artists now talking about what's actually going on in these rural areas and what's happening. But, what needs to be focused on too, like if you go into those towns, even present day, those towns are still destroyed because of this. Like it didn't leave some kind of wonderful
there's no happy ending.
There's no happy ending.
Yeah.
Like, and so what are you going to do about that? And how can we, as a society, really go back into these areas where people need some kind of assistance and some kind of help? Because what's awful about it is like it just leaves, especially the opioid, that epidemic is still there. Even though they've changed the recipe for OxyContin, they've done all these things. Well, that's all fine and good. You still have just a wake of just heartbreak, and there are no flowers.
No.
What I mean? It's just decimated.
Yeah.
So you have to be willing also to be able to look at how devastating it is in order to try to figure out a way to bring it back to life.
Right.
So is there, are we going to figure that out this afternoon? The fact that we're talking about it is really one of the steps to go to the forefront of that as well. And so I think the more that you're talking about it, the more that these areas, people don't forget about them. Because, coming out of an election year and all these different things that are going on, everybody is in their own world, but, drug addiction, it's not bias, and it can.
Some of the happiest people, you quote unquote happiest people, they're dealing with it. Here's the clown type of thing. Yeah.
And I think the big thing that, like, what I see also too right now as an artist and as somebody that, has had experience with this as well, look, I have a difference of opinion in some regards to what I see with, how these new, I don't know if they're like test subjects or, there's a lot of new scientific evidence about like psilocybin and about MDMA and about marijuana and about CBD and all these different things. And there's a whole lot of information, but sometimes I wonder, is it skewed? Has it been turned around? Has it, like, what is actually going to work for you? And, when you have a dilemma in there is, for some people, they're like, well, that's just an excuse for me to do drugs. Well, if there's an actual scientific study being done and there's clinical research on it, that's fantastic. But is that being administered by professionals?
Right.
As opposed to somebody that's like, well, I'm going to go take a God dose and hopefully I don't jump off of a building.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's where kind of the illegality gets into it, because I've seen it. People go on both sides, like the people that are advocating for these types of things and never want to say anything negative about it. Where, like, I look at cannabis sometimes, like, you're going into a smoke shop, and if you're a young kid, everything's 95% THC and all the, it's like, that's not great. And we don't have a good knowledge about like how it impacts us. And it really is because, the one side, the advocates, they don't say the negative effects. And on the other side, it's only the negative effects. And because we don't have just like an objective standard,
and it also
of like
becomes hearsay,
exactly,
which makes it difficult.
It's this anecdote of like, I'm rubbing it in, I feel good. Like when we interviewed a MMA fighter, and when she's saying like my joints and knees and hips, when I rub CBD in it, I was able to fight into my 40s. It's like, all right, I'm a believer, but it's right. That's not a clinical study either, and the illegality of it is some of the problem, because we can't actually get social norms around this. Like with alcohol, we kind of at least know, like, if you're doing a shot, it's about 5 ounces of wine, it's about a beer, we have no idea with cannabis or with psilocybin for are you using a treatment stance. So then you go to different places and you start to try to self-medicate without experts. And I think that's a problem with like where we're at as a social fabric.
And I also remember too, and by the way, like, I love Portland, Oregon, but the idea to legalize all drugs probably wasn't a good idea.
Particularly without the type of support systems around it.
Which, by the way, I believe, don't quote me on it, but I believe all that's been retracted.
They retracted it, A lot of it is like the people on the ground and not potentially the policy. Like when you're not enforcing all the quality of life stuff that comes around with drug addiction, fundraising for your drugs, drug dealing, stealing, robbing. When you're not dealing with those things, that's where the problems come. And it looked like a complete divorce of law enforcement and doing this. And that's not empathy either, when you see people on the streets and things like that just doing stuff. And it's not good for your community either. So, no, I totally agree with you. Like, there has to be that balance, right?
The last time I was in Portland, Oregon, I had a day off there. We were touring and we finished the tour there. So I stayed an extra day. I usually stay, when we finish up a leg of tour, I'll stay whatever city I'm in for like 24, 48 hours. I will never forget going downtown, because I hadn't seen downtown Portland in a minute. And there was a couple at a little child in a stroller. And I just remember being across the street and watching them kind of go by. But at the same time, I'm watching a young man that looks all of maybe 18 years old shoot heroin in broad daylight.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, well, that's different.
It's different.
You know? So
we're not Knoxville anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. Like things like that I just don't think that should be quote unquote normalized.
I totally agree. I think that's
because that what that kid is shooting up is not going to enhance his life and will probably end it.
Right.
I hope that's not what happened to him. But like the fact of the matter is like, that whole, like, let's be inclusive and all that. I mean, I understand what you're doing by trying to make everyone not feel like that they're in a safe space, but come back to reality. If you're going to do that, you got to remember, you've got to also give certain people the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
If they say, I need to go to rehab, that's probably a good thing because they know they got an issue. But if somebody is like, I'm not going to rehab, but I'm going to kick it. So you have to kind of make a decision who you believe, who you don't.
Right. And that's the problem with a lot of our mechanisms. They don't have that type of flexibility. Like you said, it's a one size fits all box. Maybe you go to some drug court if you have to go through the criminal justice system and then you fail once and then it's like, oh, now you're back in the can. Like, so that's why I agree. It's so critical to show both sides of this. Like, hey, this isn't just some thing. It's going to alter you. It's going to do X. It's going to do Y. We have to do those types of things. And we just don't have that societal norm or culture or education about it.
But by the way, I'm going to say this, like, as specifically with like psychedelics, like there is some profound, like literal evidence.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
If it's administered by professionals. Right. Like literally, specifically for the military.
Oh yeah,
like with it's extraordinary where like they are finding that people that have just lived in terror from what they've seen in war, they administer. Sometimes it's just one session.
Yeah, it's reversing severe PTSD. Like we're not talking about like, hey, I feel better. It's like, oh no, it's crazy.
Literally, like where they understand it. Like something that is happening in the psilocybin and how it's reacting, which by the way has been around for, I don't know how long, forever. Yeah. When you see hieroglyphics and things like that, and they have, they'll pull back and they can actually see these drawings, in stones where
you kind of think the burning bush was,
literally
a little bit of, it was burning something.
Yeah. But the thing is that when I see like real, clinical evidence where if this is administered professionally, there are, this can actually save people's lives. Or if anything, get them to a place where they don't fear being alive on a daily basis because they don't know if they're going to be subjected to flashbacks for the rest of their life.
Exactly. Or be a danger to someone else in their family. Like it's
or themselves.
Or themselves. Yeah. MAPS, we spoke with someone there and they're the ones that do a lot of the clinical trials. And they had like a 3rd phase clinical trial that was going to go up to FDA approval. And the FDA just shot that down about a month ago.
Yeah, and I don't agree with that.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
I don't agree with that.
They cited the hallucinogenic effects as one of the negatives for doing it. It's like, well, this is kind of the point.
There was one individual, and I wish I could figure it out off the top of my head, but like they did a before and after, and it was kind of what you just said. They literally went into the session, and it was with psilocybin, and it was administered, with 2 different people. There was like a shaman, and then there were 2 like clinical doctors, and he was in the midst of a trial on this, and he went in and he said after he came out of it that he had not voices in his head anymore. He just had a voice say, let it go.
It's amazing.
Like all the voices before were like, it's never going to end. You're always going to feel like this. You killed all these people. Like what people don't understand what what people go through when they're in war, But it was one of those things where like all of the voices that I had in my head were silenced by just one voice that said, let it go. And he's like, and I don't hear that voice either anymore. I just I was assured that I could let it go. And then that guy went on and he was like, it saved my life. That's profound.
That is profound. Yeah.
It is.
It's just, you have a lot of red tape in government and just, everyone's trying to figure out what's the right thing to do. Nobody wants to be liable, but hey, we're here, we're alive, we should be figuring this out.
Yeah, particularly when you see the things that we're trying to do are just not being as effective, with drugs and things like, and that's a lot of the veterans where they're like, yeah, VA just gave me a bunch of pills and I don't want to take them. But yeah. I know we're kind of coming at time and I want to appreciate y'all. I just have one last question. You all have been in the music industry and together for so long. I think we've all kind of learned that kind of like love and communication and talking and having people around you and the support system is so critical to kind of move through this. Have you seen a change in kind of people feeling more comfortable opening up, talking about this? What have you seen change in kind of your industry, and where do you think we still need to kind of be, or where you're like, man, I wish I had that when I was younger. I wish I had this to kind of help along. Like, what do you think that kind of last positive words? Good at you, Bill.
Wow.
Yeah.
No pressure.
I just think it's up to the individual to try and help where you can. And I agree with Brent, though. The thing I worry about is I wouldn't be worried if someone in my family said, I want to do drugs. I'd be worried that they would get the wrong drug.
Right.
Because you don't get a second chance on that. And it's so complicated. But I think there's some really good aspects if it's administered by a professional.
Mm-hmm.
But another thing inside of all that is honestly about communication. I mean, the band that I'm in, we've been working with the AFSP for the better part of, a decade and a half, which is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And the fact of the matter is we tell people all the time, the number one thing that you have to focus on and work at is remember the worst thing you can do is be quiet. Like, you got to talk about it, and you got to put it out there in the open to have a dialogue and to understand things. And the other side of it too, I think that, if I can give anybody at least my personal experience with all of these subject matters and what have you, something for me personally that helped me immensely was when I learned, how important real supplementation is as you get older and real exercise is, and how it can completely change your life. And now some people will say, like, I don't have time. Yeah, you do. There's 24 hours in a day. You can carve out an hour. You know what I mean? And I think, honestly, conversation, dialogue, trying to focus on bettering yourself as much as you possibly can. I mean, one thing in the music industry that me and Bill have always been, I would like to think that has been something that we've always been meticulous about with people, and is the gratitude of, what? Be genuinely happy for somebody else's success. You know what I mean? Like, especially in this industry, it's real. And I mean that, and that's really, really important. We're all dealing with things. We all have families. We all have issues, and you never know what somebody's going through. And so just be kind when you can. It takes so much more energy to be rude or, pardon my French, but to just be an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, it's a much easier process in life of trying to build out as much of a positive, or a positivity, the outcome, and lift people up instead of tearing them down. And that's how I would look at anything. Like, we're all on this planet together. We should be taking care of one another.
Yeah.
You will have such more harmony in your life. I promise you.
You seem, you both look healthy and happy and serene. The people I've met that have your attitude as they get older, there is a youthfulness that still glows in them. And I think there's something with that as well. Like, just being happy for other people, not wearing that stress. Like, you can see people that are just miserable for everyone and themselves. They're just like, you're going to be that, but you all you just have a glow about you. And so I want to thank you.
We're working on it. We're trying.
Well, Brent calls it the carousel.
Yeah.
When he gets ready to go to bed at night, he thinks of all the people on the carousel that we all need to take care of. And it's important. And I love it. I love it. I love the music. I love my partner. I love, I just love it, man. I jump out of bed in the morning. It's great.
Bill, where can we send folks? Do you have anything to plug? Any website or anything coming up?
Well, it's our website.
Yeah, Indigood Entertainment.
Indigood Entertainment?
Everything's on social media, from TikTok to Instagram to Facebook, the whole The whole kit and caboodle. You got a bunch of artists.
I got a great
stuff.
team,
I got them all, yeah.
Great artists. I am at the best place in my life because I love everybody I'm working with. And I know that sounds corny and BS, but it's a family. What a pleasure it's been sitting and talking.
I've really enjoyed having this conversation with y'all. This has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the opportunity. We
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
man.
Yeah.
Because,
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, seriously, I had a blast.
I did too. No, this is awesome. It's really cool meeting you, and this has been great. This whole experience has been awesome. Yeah. So thank you so much. Yeah.
No problem.
This has been taking this much time when you're as busy as you are and you have kids and shit. I really appreciate it.
It's our
yeah,
pleasure.
You too. Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome interview. Thanks again, Brent Smith, Bill McGathey. It really was like a real raw and open discussion about depression and mental health and addiction and all these things and the cries for help. And it's just, I commend people that are at that level, particularly, in that time period to talk about it in that way. It's a pretty brave thing. And he was very raw about it. And, they were trying to say he's got to go to rehab right now. And the people that are closest to him, him and Bill, were just saying it probably would have been the worst thing for him at that point. And for some people, it would be the best thing for them at that point. Right. And for others, it's just, you got to meet people and there's not this one size fits all approach. I mean, I know working in the criminal justice, when I was an attorney and we had criminal defendants at our law firm, there was oftentimes we would recommend, do not take this rehab, do not take this probation. You should just do the time in jail and try to get outside help when you get out, because you are going to fail and then they're going to send you to prison for longer.
Right.
That is not a system that's working when we're saying you need help and the best approach is for you to go to jail so we can figure it out on the back end. Happens every single day in this country and every single courthouse. I guarantee you, ask any criminal defense attorney. So it's that sort of stuff where we don't have that, but we almost don't have that in society. It's already hard enough. People just want to push it, and I get it. And I think something I just wanted to touch on that kind of made me think a little bit more, and it's kind of a question, because Brent's, completely clean now, and, we started talking about psilocybin and some of the medical benefits that can happen from PTSD, mental health, and actually treating, addiction for opiates and things like that, helping with withdrawals and kind of suppressing the need for it and craving. And it must be really difficult, and you could hear the skepticism, and it's rightful, from someone that, substances were the thing that were getting him out, and, the pathway through was sobriety. And so to say the solution is also something I get his skepticism. And so I had never thought about it that way. And so it was good to hear that from a different perspective. And so,
it's probably hard to hear when, you've gotten clean, why didn't you try drugs?
Yeah.
Why didn't you try more drugs?
He's open to it. And I think that's what we all just need to say and see is just, let's be open to this and just be, let's be honest.
Right.
Let's get back to the Rick Williams. Let's just be honest about what we're talking about. So again, Bill, Brent, amazing. I'm Greg Glod.
And I'm Clayton English.
And this is The War on Drugs.